Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am very pleased to have with me Kevin Wayne Johnson. And let me tell you about Kevin. Kevin Wayne Johnson has taken up the task of developing individual and organizational operating excellence as his life's mission. He coaches in order to coax audiences to live out their gifts and awaken their potential. He provides organizations and the people who work within them the tools to forge effective personal and interpersonal communication. He delivers training on the elements of dynamic leadership, dynamic relationships to equip the teams with the attitudes and attributes needed to develop individually as leaders. He does so through motivating workshops, interactive seminars, insightful keynote speeches, and compassionate coaching, all to encourage personal and professional growth within the federal and state government, corporations, nonprofits, and also churches and academia. So today we're going to share with you, get your paper and pencils ready, 15 invaluable laws of growth. Now, I'm not sure that we're going to get them all in this session. Maybe we'll have a second session, but we'll give you a few of them at least. So please join me in welcoming my guest, Kevin Wayne Johnson. Kevin, so good to have you on the podcast.
Yes, thank you, Vicki. I appreciate the invitation. Always glad to be here.
Awesome. So we always start out with a little bit of getting to know you better. Just tell the audience, where do you call home? Where do you live?
Well, I currently live in the Washington, D.C., Maryland metropolitan area. We're located about 40 minutes north of our nation's capital, about 20 minutes south of Baltimore, by way of Richmond, Virginia. That's where I was really born and raised. I went to the Richmond, Virginia public school system, and then I matriculated over to Virginia Commonwealth University School of Business, where I'm still a very active alumni with everything that they do. And but we've been living here in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Maryland area now for going over 30 years. We really love the area. And I first came here when I finished college because of the job opportunities.
Fantastic. So we gave all of the things that you're doing professionally, but I do like to just go down memory lane for a few minutes and understand that, you know, where you are today may never have been in your 5-year plan, 20-year plan. So what was the journey like that took you from that young boy in Maryland or Virginia, to be able to be where you are today and doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I would say it's just a culmination of life's activities, life's journeys, how we navigate the road. Anytime you travel down a road, you always run into 4 obstacles on any given road. One obstacle is a speed bump. You have to slow down enough to get over it, and then you maintain your speed. And you also have potholes. Through wisdom, you can't drive through a pothole. You have to slow down just enough to go through it or go around it. And then you also have hills, and then you also have curves, and you manage different curves based upon how steep the hill is or how windy the curve is, and you slow down just enough to keep moving forward. But it's just really a culmination of all the different things that happen in life, good and bad. They're all experiences.
Yeah.
And then over time, you kind of gravitate towards something that really either burdens you or really hits you in the gut.
Yeah.
And in my case, it turned out to be leadership. I spent 34 years with the federal government. I'm the son of a U.S. Marine, and I've watched and I've experienced good leadership and how it made me feel, how it motivated me and inspired me, and bad leadership,
Yeah.
how it made me shrink up and not really be the best that I could be and think something's wrong with me. And I decided to move into that place and that space. And that's where I've been for a good number of years, having an opportunity to really pour into the next generation of leaders. So it's been a really, really fun ride. I'm learning every day, which makes it very, very exciting. And it's been a good journey.
I think, the best thing is let's just stay there, because you and I, have similar ideas of leadership and why it's so important. Both of us have gone down this road because of bad leaders and as well as good leaders. But especially today, where we had several years now where the absence, if you will, of the opportunity to be exposed day to day to great leaders, and in some cases maybe it was a godsend if you were in a situation where you had a bad leader that really was not helping you in your career, in your life, having them not figure out how to work in this virtual world. Maybe that was a good thing for you. Maybe you turned to books, mentors online and things like that, gurus. But just talk to us about leadership, and especially today in 2024. Why is it so important that we get it right?
Well, it's very important that we get it right because the human resource is at stake, and the human
Yeah.
resource is the most valuable resource in any organization. It's
Yeah.
more valuable than making money. It's more valuable than getting your SOPs correct. It's really, really important. And where we are right now, Vicki, your question is so appropriate because we have 5 generations of
Yes.
people in the workplace at the same time.
Yeah.
And as I always share with people, every one of us sees the world through our own lens
Yeah.
because of our multiple experiences, because of where we grew up, what we were exposed to, our education level, where we may have spent most of our life geographically across the United States, whether you're an only child or you have multiple siblings. I mean, there's so many different factors that go into what make people tick and how they make decisions and how they solve problems. But the root of it is how they see the world through their lens, and being respectful and honoring and listening to people's perspectives and viewpoints will help us all as leaders to really take that next step and to move a team and to move an organization forward. The challenge that we have is that the technological advances that have taken place in our country and across the world have us all very, very, very distracted. And because we're so distracted, we're in an environment where people get offended very easily. I remember, just every day when I go out, I just kind of watch and I observe how people are driving, how they carry themselves in the grocery store. I'm sitting on the little bench in the mall watching people walk around, and there's a difference in terms of demeanor and behavior that wasn't there 15 years ago. This pre-pandemic. So we just have to be very careful and making sure as leaders that we're just a little bit more patient and a little bit more in tune with what is going on in the lives of people, because we're juggling a lot, but at the same time, we're very distracted because of all of the advances with technology. So I found it to be twofold. And when I share with leaders, both of those, we have an opportunity to kind of unpack it. But what's core to human behavior is that people want to be heard.
Yeah.
And so if we're not exhibiting good listening skills, we're already off on the wrong foot. Now,
Yeah.
most of the time, it's not done intentionally. But listen, when we're communicating with others, oftentimes the intended message just simply is not received in the manner it was intended. And so that's what's happening. It's all core to human behavior. And I believe it's podcasts like yours, training opportunities, resources, helping us to kind of reach out in our spare time to just stay abreast in terms of what's happening in our country and also what's happening around the world as it relates to people.
So we'll get into those 15 invaluable laws of growth in a moment, but I wanted to just spend some time talking about the difference between leadership and management. And I think that's where some companies get it wrong, because they promote people into management that don't have the skill sets, the training, not that they don't have the potential, but they weren't given the training to be able to be a leader. They just go in and they think, well, they're great at this operational skill, this software guru, with Excel or project management or whatnot. But their people skills, their interpersonal, their communication skills, the patience, the active listening is all not there. But they're still promoted and expected to perform. And that's why I think people leave companies, because of poor management, not because of the leaders that they put in, because they're not putting in leaders. They're just putting people to fill a role that they're not equipped to fill.
Yeah, absolutely. So you really hit it on the head, and 2 thumbs up, and you're spot on. All too often, all types of organizations throughout the marketplace, government, corporations, nonprofits, churches, and academic institutions, those are the primary areas where people are in the marketplace. Leadership observes, watches, assesses, and evaluates the high performers. And they get in the little room and they have a conversation behind closed doors that this person here has done well consistently for 5 years. Look at their performance evaluation. Time to move them up. Let's move them up to the next level. And you're right. They're not equipped. It's a whole different ball game when it comes to leading people. Because when that subject matter expert is moved up to the next level of responsibility, they're not aware, because they haven't been taught, they haven't been trained, they haven't been coached or mentored. Your job now is to take care of the people that will do the work. You no longer do the work.
And that's an area they have the hard time with.
Right. Because see, in our minds, we know that we can do it better because we've done it for so long, but that's no longer our role. Now, I know there are some exceptions where we do roll up our sleeves and we get in there and we get it done, but that's the exception and not the norm. And so you're right. So now we have an organization that has an X number of men and women who are ill-equipped now to lead people, to oversee, to guide, to provide resources, to recommend training. And that's the difference between the two. You asked earlier, well, what's the difference between management and leadership? Well, we manage systems and tools and actions and initiatives and projects and contracts. We manage automation. We manage procedures and directives and guidance. Those are managed. And yes, they all need to be in place for the benefit of the people. But when it comes to the people, they need to be led. They need leaders. They need someone who's a role model, an example, someone who they can emulate, someone they can count on to send them to the necessary training, to see their potential, to identify positions of higher responsibility that they can be developed for over a period of time. So we lead people, but we manage the resources that they need to be the best that they can be. And that's the difference between the two. Now, here's what causes some of the confusion in the workplace. Some of these leadership positions actually have as a title in the work role, manager. So it gets kind of confusing, but we help organizations to really understand the nuances and the differences between the two. And now we can start to take a closer look at how we can assist and help and sort of guide how the organization should be structured, and prepare your bench of leaders by executing and implementing A, B, and C. Oh, and by the way, those that are currently in leadership positions, let's now move them into a space where we can teach them leadership principles and strategies and give them some tools for their toolbox that they'll need to lead the people. So that's really the difference between the two. But I love the way that you introduced the topic, because you're on point.
And I think a hole that I noticed was, part of it was from the benefits of some of the mentors that I had throughout my years, that some were direct managers, some were actually several people above me that mentored me. But they took the time, and let's go back to that active listening. They took the time to have conversations with me about what they were doing, about the company mission, vision, all things that were way above my pay grade. But they were able to tie it into how what I was doing was important to that. So now it made me feel like I was part of the solution, and therefore more willing to give more of myself to do that. But in those conversations, they heard, what does Vicki really want to do? What does she have? What does she have that she doesn't even see yet, that I can develop, that I can mature and grow for her? And that's talking about these invaluable laws of growth, right? These are the things that managers, they get in their offices, shut the door, and just look at reports and forget that the people that are doing those reports have needs and have aspirations and potential, that we are the ones as leaders to not only inspire, but to uncover and develop. And it's more than maybe your job description outlines, but it is truly the job of a leader.
Yeah, and that's actually the pink elephant in the room. That's the piece that most of us don't share with our leaders. Yeah. See, there is a certain level of respect that is given to a person in a leadership position. There are assumptions that are made by the team, by the division, by the organization, that that person is in that role because they are a subject matter expert. They bring a degree of acumen, and they really know their stuff. Until or unless that leader proves them wrong. But generally speaking, the credibility comes. Here's what people are thinking, and they usually don't say it. How is my leader going to treat me? Is my leader going to listen to me? Yeah. Do my opinions matter? Does my leader even give a care that I showed up today?
Yeah.
Are they going to give me an opportunity for advancement? That's really what people are thinking. They don't say it. And leaders need to be aware of that. So I challenge leaders all the time. And it doesn't matter if you're frontline, mid-level, or senior level. It doesn't matter if you're an aspiring leader or a seasoned leader. Wherever you are on the spectrum, I always share the simplicity of this message. And it goes like this: get to know your people. And equally important, allow yourself to be known by your people.
Oh,
Because
let's
it's
spend
mutual.
some time there.
It's mutual. It's a mutual. Because
Yeah.
when you send that message that, hey, you know, guess what? I want to get to know how you tick. I want to know how you communicate. What's your preferred way of me asking you to perform on this assignment? What do you expect from me? How can I help? How can I assist? How can I add value to what it is that you're going to do? And now we're in the process of building a relationship, and in due time, that relationship now builds that trust. And that trust,
Ah,
yeah, it starts with the conversation. It leads to the relationship, which then fosters and breeds the trust.
yeah.
And what's so special, Vicki, about trust is that once it's developed, even when we make mistakes, even if we fall a little short, even if we do something that we really shouldn't have done, because the trust is there, there's a higher propensity to forgive and to get some grace.
Yeah. And also, one of my mentors used to say, I hire people smarter than me. And that was
Mm-hmm.
so important, because just as you were talking about with the trust, that I am human just like you are. Just because I have this title does not mean that I'm not going to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see that I make mistakes, then you feel less fearful of trying things that are outside of your comfort zone, because if you fail, you know that the consequences are going to be less dramatic, if you will, unless it's against company policy or something like that. But it will be forgiven in some cases, and taken as, what did you learn from that? How can we make sure that that doesn't happen again?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think, again, that's an area where somebody that goes into that leadership role, that manager role, as a manager, and thinks, well, I can't ever let them see that I don't know what I'm doing.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
I like that. Um, Fear of retribution and fear of retaliation
yeah,
are the two big things that are going on in the minds of people. And that's why people are generally afraid to take a risk that might lead to failure. But I remind people all the time, if you don't fail, you're not going to get to the success ranks. I
yeah,
don't know of
that's
anybody who
right.
is considered a success who hasn't made some mistakes, tripped up, picked themselves up, dust themselves off, and try again. So if we can create that environment and that atmosphere such that people feel comfortable in being able to express their thoughts and their opinions, even if it can't be executed or implemented, even if it comes across as something that doesn't necessarily make sense, or if we do adopt it and it just doesn't work, guess what? That's okay.
Yeah,
That's what we're doing together. That's what it's all about. But it's the leader that has to create that environment.
right. So let's talk about intentionality as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And that falls into, I think, one of your laws of growth.
Yep.
So how important as a leader is it to demonstrate intentionality?
That word to me, Vicki, is synonymous with just being laser focused,
Yeah.
right? If you're laser focused, that means that you're leading an organization, you're leading a group of people with an emphasis on doing a few things very, very well, as opposed to being intentional and trying to do a lot of things and it's
Mm,
just average or mediocre. And that's the difference, I believe, between a good leader in terms of them just being focused day-to-day and strategic, and not. I always encourage people in my sphere of influence, let's do 2 or 3 things very, very well that we'll really be known for in our organization and in the marketplace. But it takes a leader that's deliberate and intentional in that area to not just do it, but also leading people while you're doing it as well, because people are watching. They're always watching, but they're also listening to what we have to say as well. And that's what intentionality is all about. I just called it just being laser focused on what's really, really important, and leading this individual, leading this group, leading this team to that desired outcome in a way that will be the most effective. And the most effective is really in the spirit of just being focused on the task at hand and not trying to do 12, 15, 18 things and they come out to be average, but 2 or 3 things that turn out to be excellent and outstanding. And so that's what we're referencing around intentionality.
Do you have another law called, I think it's the law of the lid?
Law of the lid. Yeah.
Talk to them about that being top of your game.
Yeah, think about a lid on a pot. Think about a lid on the frying pan. Think about a lid on any canned good. Think about a lid from any perspective. When you open up your the hood of your car and you look at where the oil goes, or where the windshield wiper goes, or where any of the other fluids go, there's always a lid, right? The law of the lid kind of reminds us that periodically you got to lift it up. You have to look inside and inspect.
See if it's empty.
Right. It really helps us to inspect what you expect.
Yeah.
Right. And when it comes to leadership, our role is not to micromanage our people, but our role is to give them just enough room where they can use their own creativity, their own imagination, their own innovation and ingenuity to bring the best to the project that they're leading, the initiative or the task. But as the leader, we're close by so that they can ask questions and we can provide guidance, but we're not constantly looking over their shoulder. And what we're doing is we are periodically inspecting what we expect. No different than when you're frying your food. Periodically, you lift up that lid and you want to check it out. Yeah, exactly. You don't want that. Or if you're broiling something over the stove or whatever it might be, you're cooking something in the oven. And that's what we mean by the law of the lid. We're just periodically, because listen, the best thing for us is feedback. Feedback is always, if it's given with the intent of helping us to improve and to develop. That's a whole nother conversation, Vicki, but we should not be afraid. We should actually run into getting feedback because it'll help us all out. And as a leader, when we give feedback, it should always be with the intent of helping that person or that team to improve and get better.
And I just love this, and it definitely could be another podcast about this, because there's so much wrapped in that whole idea. Even if you think of a high performer, a person that's everything's going okay, tooling along great. And so a lot of times we as managers just focus on the people that aren't performing, and then those people that are doing their job, they need recognition. They need attaboys, if you will. So that's where, you look on the lid, and as I was talking about, does it need to be filled? Do you need to put into them new challenges, new development, new ways to keep them growing? And then as you were talking about the frying pan, I'm thinking, when you lift that lid, do you smell those wonderful smells of the savory garlic going and things like that? That you think, okay, things are cooking good here? Or do you see that they're burning, that they're burnt out, that they need some help, and they maybe they have raised the flag that they need help, but maybe they're that person that's too afraid to let you know that they're drowning.
Exactly. So that kind of goes hand in hand with this invaluable law
Yeah.
of the lid, and that's exactly what we're talking about. And you made a really good point that I just want to touch on real quick in the high performers, those that are doing well, the superstars, those that get it done. The best thing that we can do is as often as we can think, not necessarily every day or even every week, but in a very informal way, remind them of how valuable they are on the team,
Yeah.
and that you really appreciate them, and all the value that they bring to the team. Otherwise, they will feel like you're taking them for granted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And guess what?
They'll be gone.
It's not our intent to do that,
No.
but guess what? That's what they will perceive.
Yeah.
And a person's perception is their reality.
Yeah.
So don't take them for granted. If they're doing a good job, number one, don't keep piling on work on them because you know they're going to get it done, but make sure that you let them know how much you appreciate them. It'll go a very long way.
So what about the law of authenticity? You know, I talk a lot about on the podcast
Hmm.
about authenticity, and I think that's something, again, it's somewhat tied to fear that this manager, not leader, is afraid to let you truly see themselves as they truly are, vulnerable or not. And that, to me, that authenticity is the tie-in to trust, the
Yeah,
sincerity.
absolutely. Yeah, two things are happening, Vicki. Number one, people have a really good insight and discernment on what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
They know, but people also really appreciate someone who's genuine and authentic. I use those words interchangeably. Um, as you know, in this season of life, I do a lot of training and coaching and mentoring and speaking post my retirement, 34 years with the service. But when I was gainfully employed and the work that I do today, um, you introduced me prior to the podcast, and I really appreciate it. But here's the way that I introduce myself, generally speaking, when I'm in front of an audience. And it goes something like this. I'll paraphrase. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Wayne Johnson. I'm a native of Richmond, Virginia. I'm the son of a U.S. Marine. I don't have any sisters, but I have one brother. He's 3.5 years younger than I am, and he was born with a mental disability.
Mm.
Dad was away when I was a little boy fighting in America's wars, Vietnam twice, and Okinawa, Japan once. And I had to learn what it means to support and serve and advocate and negotiate for someone with a mental disability right there in my family, in my home. So as a little boy, along with my mom, we literally had to raise my brother. And I learned very early that people have a propensity to disrespect those who are different.
Yeah.
And so I had to fight for him. Fast forward, I graduate high school, I go on to college, and I meet this young lady just after college. We fall in love, we get married, and from our union, we have 3 sons. And our youngest son, who's now 26, when he was 2 years of age, he was diagnosed with autism.
Mm.
So here we go again.
Yeah.
And so what I learned in the home, I take into the marketplace. And I just introduced myself in less than a minute, and people can pick up on the story in terms of
Mm.
me just kind of being open in terms of who I am. So because of my background and because of how I was raised, here are my core values: character, integrity, and respect.
Mm.
And then I kind of walk them through why. And that's kind of how I introduced myself when I was leading organizations, and now that I'm training organizations, to let them know that, listen, nothing is really off limits here. And what happens is that I'm able to connect, I'm
Mm.
able to build bridges, and I'm able to create some common bonds with somebody in the audience. And inevitably, at just about every time, at the very end, someone comes up and we have a conversation.
Yeah.
So that's just an example of how we as leaders, to the extent that you're comfortable, can start this dialogue and this conversation, because that will lead to a good working relationship.
Yeah.
That will then lead to trust. And that's what leaders are expected to do.
Absolutely. So time has flown by. We are
It always does.
definitely going to have to get back together.
Okay.
So uh, in these last few minutes, we talked about intentionality, law of the lid, law of authenticity. For me, as a leader, as a communicator, I think a lot of this of people's success, of my success, is around positivity. And it's so easy to find the negative. It's so easy to see the bad. But there's so much that you could turn it around to be positive. So talk to us about law of positivity.
Well, there are four things going on simultaneously, Vicki, that I think we can control. When I say we, those of us as leaders. First of all, I kind of start out with this phrase. I believe that in life really composes of, and this is how Kevin Johnson looks at it anyway, 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we respond to it.
Oh, yeah.
That's just how I roll. Now, some people are like, "Oh, that doesn't make any sense." Well, I'm not here to debate. I've said that's how I look at it, because any situation can be constructive or destructive,
Yeah.
depending on how we respond to it, and any situation can be positive or it can be negative based on how we respond to it. And I'm a firm believer of that, and I lived it out, and I do it all the time. Even right now as we speak, when I'm out on the road driving, I'm noticing that people are much more apt to be in a hurry, not so courteous, not very forgiving, angry. I could go on and on. I'm noticing that more than I did before the pandemic. And there was a time where I would respond in kind, like, what's wrong with you? What are you doing? Did you see me coming? Or just stay calm and keep going forward. So depending on how we respond, it could be constructive or it could be destructive. It could be positive or negative. So how we respond to things, I believe, puts us in the driver's seat to make a difference and to be an example for others in terms of how they should respond.
Awesome. Well, it is time for us to share my slide
All
on that
right.
response. And so I'm going to share my screen for those that are just listening. You can definitely see how you can contact Kevin Wayne Johnson. His website is thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com, and Facebook, you can find him at Kevin Wayne Johnson page. Instagram is Writing for the Lord. Twitter is Writing for the Lord. And again, 4 is a number for that one. LinkedIn is his name, Kevin Wayne Johnson. And if you could just quickly tell them, what can they find on the leadership group website?
It's a comprehensive overview of our company, the work that we do here in the United States and abroad, in 3 different categories, primarily leadership development training, but also executive coaching, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion training and consultancy. Our full events calendar is there. Contact information is there. You'll see some testimonials from customers that we've dealt with. You'll see the full list at the bottom of the homepage of all the organizations that we work with in the marketplace. And you'll see some of the members of our team that are on there as well. So it's what I call the typical go-to place to get information about who we are and what we do. We're celebrating our 6th year. This is our 6th year following my 34 years with the federal government. And I don't believe that we've even touched the tip of the iceberg yet. So I'm super excited about what's to come.
Awesome. So thank you once again for being a great guest.
Thank you.
And I, as always, remind everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling, signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.